Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are in Parshat Vayishlach. The topic du jour is engagement. So we last week studied Yaakov having a dream. There's some theories that he incubated that dream by putting his head on a rock and entering a state where he could have a vision. He has a vision of the Malachim going up and down the Sulam. We have Elena's rendering of the beautiful painting over here, if you'd like to look at it on your way out. And we talked about that. We're going to talk about another experience similar that Yaakov has, where we're told that somehow this is an encounter with the divine, like it was last week. Last week it seemed to be a dream or a vision. Remember, in the ancient world, often dreams had a lot of power, right?
They still do.
They still do. But the most famous being, of course, Joseph, right? So Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dreams is what gets him freed from prison, because it was taken very seriously that dreams were messages from the other side, from another realm, and you needed an expert who could interpret them. But Yaakov seems to be clear about part of what his dream meant, and now we're going to see what happens with him getting a message from the other side this week. All right. Verse 4, Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav el Esav. So last week we had malachim, we had messengers that were from the other side, right, or from up there, however you want to talk about it. We had messengers, we had malachim going up and down the sulam. Now we have Yaakov sending malachim. He is sending messengers, right? So it is used interchangeably, malachim as divine messengers and malachim regular postal carrier messengers. Okay, so in Torah it is used interchangeably.
Exactly.
So he sends malachim before him el Esav. He's sending messengers to Esav, his brother, because Yaakov is on the way home, right? He's married to women. He has 2 concubines. He has 13 children by them. He has the 12 boys and who? Dinah. He has 12 boys and Dinah. And so he is coming home with his retinue, with his whole caravan, and he's heard that Esav is coming with 400 men. Generally, if somebody who sought to kill you 20 years ago is coming to meet you with 400 men, generally one would have some misgivings, right, about what the intentions were of the person coming with 400 men. Okay, so he's sending malachim to Esav ahead of him, right? Artza Seir. What do we have when we have the hay at the end of Aretz? Towards, right, the land of Seir, Sdei Edom, the fields of Edom. And so he commands these messengers, saying, "Thus shall you speak to my lord Esav. Thy servant Yaakov says, thus I have sojourned with Lavan and stayed there until now. I have oxen and asses, flocks and men servants and women servants, and I need to share my screen." Okay. I have sent to tell my lord that I might find favor in your sight. And the messengers returned to Yaakov, saying, we came to your brother Esav, and also he's coming to meet you with 400 men with him. Yaakov was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him and the flocks and herds and the camels into 2 camps and said, if Esav comes to one camp and smites it, then the camp which is left shall be safe. And right? And Yaakov said, God of my father Abraham, God of my father Yitzchak, God who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, and I will deal well with you. I am unworthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant. For with my staff I passed over this Yarden, the river Yarden, and now I am become 2 camps. Hatzilenina, save me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav, for I fear him, lest he come and smite me, the mother with the children. And you said, okay, so this is, one of the qualities of the patriarch. One of the qualities of the Jewish leader is, you said, God. So let's just be clear here. In case you have forgotten, you said, I will surely do good for you and make your seed like the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. And he lodged there that same night and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esav, his brother. So he sends all of these gifts to his brother, a lot, right? 200 goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 camels, right? So he's sending a huge amount of wealth to Esav. And he commanded the foremost, saying, when Esav, my brother, meets you and asks you, whose are you and where are you going? And who are these before you? You shall say, they are your servant Yaakov's. It is a present sent to my lord Esav, and behold, Yaakov is back there. Okay? So Yaakov is very clever. He is buttering Esav up, and he is making it clear that although he is wealthy, he is not coming to use that wealth to make war on Esav. He is also showing Esav deference. Right? These your servant Yaakov is sending you, my lord, these gifts. He is, right? He is stating that he understands his place and that Esav is his lord. Okay. Smart move, right? If you don't want to go to war. And so then he does this a second time and a third time, and each group, when they get to Esav, say, behold, your servant Yaakov is behind us, for he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterwards I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me, is how my translation says it. What does your translation say? Pardon? Ulai yisa fanai. Betsy, you want to take a go with the Hebrew? Ulai, maybe, yisa fanai.
Esau, before.
So, right? Betsy's having a hard time translating this because this is a hard thing to translate. Ulai, when I see him, epanav, I will see his face. Ulai, and maybe yisa fanai, priestly benediction. Yisa Adonai panav elecha. May God lift up God's face towards you. This is the same expression. Ulai, maybe, yisa fanai. He will lift up my face. Now, your translation says, pardon.
Yeah, totally.
Mine says, accept.
Very different.
They're different. And does that sound anything like the Hebrew?
No.
So these translators are trying to get at what this idiomatic expression means. Perhaps he will lift up my face. Recognize me, meaning accept me, forgive me. God nosea avon. God lifts off sin. Same word, same verb. So perhaps they're hearkening to, right, lifting up of sin, meaning forgiveness. That's what we ask God, to nosea avon, to take off our sins. Okay, we're not sure.
Where is your translation? What are you reading from?
Yeah, mine is the Koran Jerusalem Bible because I kind of like it, but I was using. I got to go back to using what's his face, Robert Alter. I want to use Robert Alter's translations. I need to change it.
And aren't there things to edit the translation? They're so varied.
So, your translation, the Green Book, is JPS translation, old JPS translation with new commentary and editor's comments. So that is an older translation. So Eitz Chaim is a different translation. The red book, right, is a different translation. The Torah, the red Torah that's not Eitz Chaim is Plaut. That is the Reform movement old translation. They're doing a new one. The Reform movement is working on a new translation. Robert Alter translated the entire Torah, and he is someone who comes from the background of literature. So his commentary, so his translation and his commentary are about language, less about, like in the ancient Near East, the law was, even though he knows that stuff, he's gonna say, we see this phrase, Yisa Fanai, in blah, 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 blah. So I'm translating it as, because in those places, it's translated blah, blah.
So there's truth in all of them.
Yes, exactly.
Well, on Sepharia, you can bring up a little panel that has all the different translations of that verse. So
just to give you all a little macro lesson, see where on my Sepharia page it says go to translations? Go to translations. Here are the English options for translation, right? There's a contemporary JPS. There's Everett Fox. I like his too. There's the Metsuda. There's the Kehot Chumash. There's JPS 85. Rashi Chumash. There's the JPS 1917. There's Sepharia Community Translation. Let's do that. All right, let's see what the Sepharia. Okay. So let's pick up where we were. So he's sending all these gifts to soften up Esav. Hopefully Esav will greet him not dead. I'm not going to go too far with the translation, but he doesn't want to die. And he doesn't want his family to die. Where am I?
Not dead.
Here's a little background for those who've forgotten. Jacob and Esau, stole the father's blessing. Then what happened after that? Till now.
Rebecca overhears Esau saying, once Isaac is dead and the time for mourning him is over, he's going to kill Yaakov. So she says to Yaakov, you need to skip town and you need to go to my family and stay there essentially until I send for you, till I let you know it's okay. Because Rivka never sees Yaakov again, right? So what Rivka did in organizing him getting the blessing meant she never saw her son again. So he goes, he works for Lavan, he marries, he thinks he's going to get Rachel. Lavan tricks him and gives him the sister Leah instead. He works another 7 years for Rachel. So he's got 2 wives. He's worked 14 years for Lavan. He's done very well for himself because he tricks Lavan. It's a whole thing. And so he comes back wealthy, but he wants to come home. He's ready to come home. He's done with Lavan. He's like done. All right. Blah, 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 blah. Where are we? 21? If I propitiate him, $4 word. If I propitiate him with presents in advance and then face him, perhaps, look at this translation. Perhaps he will show me favor. Okay?
Can also be translated respect.
We can do whatever we want with it. It's an idiomatic expression. It's like window shopping. It doesn't mean you're shopping for windows. Right?
You are.
Okay. And so the gift went on ahead while he remained in the camp at night. The same night he arose and taking his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, meaning his concubines, and his 11 sons, he crossed the ford of the Yavok. Why are there 11? Why aren't there 12?
No, it's 12 boys. It's 12 boys.
All right, I'm not answering. I got to figure it out. All right. After taking them across the stream, he sent across all his possessions, and Yaakov was left alone. Vayivater Yaakov levado. Yaakov was left alone. So he takes the camp. He splits the camp into 2. He splits the wives, each with their maidservant, that is his concubine, Bilhah and Zilpah. He splits the camp and sends them over the Yarden, right? And then, not over the Yarden, over the Yabok. All right, so look at verse 23. Look at the last word in Hebrew. You don't have to know Hebrew. Just look at the letters. Yud, Bet, Kuf. This word here at the end of 23. Those 3 letters are in the name what? Yaakov. You cannot miss it in the Hebrew. If this is an oral tale first, you cannot miss the Hebrew, the Yabuk, Yaakov, right? And the Yaakov is on the other side of Yabuk. You cannot miss it in Hebrew. So this is probably a tale originating with the 3 billy goats gruff motif. All right. Tell me a little bit about 3 billy goats gruff and that motif of tail. You can't cross the river. Well, you might can, but what's the problem with crossing the river?
You'll get the ogre.
You got an ogre there because every river has an ogre and or has a protective spirit associated with it. And you have to cross, usually you're crossing on a bridge, right? So 3 billy goats gruff, if you'll recall, the ogres are under the bridge. So what do you have to do to get across that bridge? Sometimes you have to solve a riddle. You have to deal with the ogre or the demon or the spirit of the river. You're going to encounter it and you have to deal with it. And if you deal with it successfully,
You're allowed to cross.
you're allowed to cross. Okay. So he's staying on this side of the Yabuk and he's alone. All right. The commentary I'm bringing you this time is something I've never seen before, and I've been studying this text my whole life. So I'm bringing you a new interpretation that we'll get to. But in general, it's understood to be a 3 billy goats gruff kind of tale. They were very common, right? This is a very common motif. All right. So his family goes across. Yaakov comes back over the Yabuk and is there alone. And all his stuff is with them. What happens? Vayavek. You cannot miss, again, in the Hebrew, right? This is literature. This is told around the fire. The Yaakov, the Yabuk, and Yavek. All there together. So he's left alone. V'yavek ish imo. A man yaveks with him. And what is that? And that is to wrestle. Ad alot hashachar, until the sun is coming up. Vayar, and when he saw kilo yacholo, that he wasn't able against him. Vayiga bechaf yerecho, and he injures him in the hip socket. Right? It's going to be okay, Lee. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I know. I felt it too. Right, Lisa? We're okay. So he injures him in the hip socket. V'teka yerech Yaakov, and he dislocates, essentially, the yerech of Yaakov, the hip of Yaakov, behe'avko imo, in his wrestling with him. Okay, a lot of this, he, him, we don't know exactly who's who. This is absolutely the way you write a story when you're talking about something out of the ordinary. It is very muddy. He said, he did, he didn't, he saw that he couldn't get him. They know it's confusing. It is meant to be confusing. It is written in a confusing way because we are not talking about a normal meeting. So if you're going to have a challenge, hero, villain, demon, blah, 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 you write it differently than you write, Yaakov went to the supermarket and bought some delicious cheese and bread. You write it very differently. And that they know that this is confusing. It's meant to be. Okay? So he sees that he's not able, there's no real verb there. He's not able to him. Okay? But if they're wrestling, you can fill it in. He sees he's not able to win, beat him, pin him, whatever. And so this ish dislocate or like somehow injures Yaakov's hip. Vayomer, So now the sun is about to come up. Vayomer, and he said, who said? Right? He said, Shalcheni, ki Allah hashachar, let me go, because the sun is coming up. Vayomer, and he said, lo, I'm not going to send you, I'm not going to let you go unless you berachtani, bless me. Oh. So who's talking to whom? Vayomer elav, and he said to him, Ma shmecha, what is your name? Vayomer, and he said, Yaakov. So you have to read backwards from this pasuk to know who's talking when, right? So it appears the Ish says to Yaakov, let me go, for the sun is rising. Because why does it matter if the sun is rising? Unless this is some kind of being that doesn't like the sunshine, right? So we know there are many traditions of night, things that thrive in the night that don't like the day, right? Have something, right? A story about some being that is not normal, right? That can't be in the sun. Okay, so goes, and so Yaakov, it turns out it's Yaakov saying, I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me. Okay.
So Yaakov was holding the man.
Yes. So Yaakov is able to hang on. They're wrestling. This being can't subdue him, and Yaakov isn't subduing the being. So they're wrapped in this very intimate, think about wrestling for a second. It's very intimate. So he is wrapped. Rashi says he's wrapped around. They're wrapped around each other. And so this one is saying, "Let me go," because the sun is rising. And Yaakov says, unless you bless me. Okay, kind of an maybe odd request, unless you know that this Ish is not just a person. Unless you know he's got the power to bless you in a way that will be meaningful and that will matter. So he says to him, what's your...
to the man who stole the blessing.
Correct. This is to the son who stole Esav's bracha.
So maybe he's trying to get the blessing from his father again.
Well, he's not wrestling with his father.
No, but he's saying, give me a blessing that I could use. That would really be for me and not one that I stole.
Give me a blessing that I earned.
Right.
By hanging on to you this long. Because now the sun's coming up. You're communicating to me that you need to go. Exactly. So I have won something here. I've won some leverage. I earned it. I earned this blessing. Beautiful, Bert. Beautiful. So he says, what's your name? And he answers, Yaakov. Vayomer. And he says, Lo Yaakov Ya'amer od shimcha. Yaakov will no longer be called your name. Ki im Yisrael. But Yisrael. Ki sarita im Elohim ve'im anashim vetuchal. For you have what? What is your translation? Struggled? Okay, mine says striven.
Yes, striven.
So, right.
Strived.
Striven. Okay. Strive. And yours says struggled. You have struggled. Sarita. This is the sar of Yisra. The surah, right, is sar. So that's the interpretation of the surah of Yisrael. Sarita im Elohim, you have striven with Elohim. Is that Elohim capital E? Or is it Elohim lowercase e, gods? There's no uppercase or lowercase in Hebrew. So we don't know. Either you have striven with God, capital Elohim, or with gods and anashim and people, vetuchal, and you were able. Okay, so we got he wasn't able before, and names Yaakov Yisrael because Yaakov dealt with some kind of non-human beings and people and was able. Okay? So whatever you want to put in there to win, to hang on, to survive, to thrive, to get rich, right?
So did he thriven as well as striven?
Right, it seems so.
Is that a common use?
No. So this is where you might look at. So I'm going to go to Sepharia on the right. All I did was click on the verse 29 because she's asking about a word in verse 29. I click on verse 29. I click on dictionary, right? Search dictionary. And you can search, Betsy, for Sarita. And it'll give you the root. It'll give you the BDB root. And some other places we see that word. Okay. Anashim is plural. People. Esav, right? In some ways his father. Lavan.
But so does everybody.
Mm-hmm. But some people don't have it quite as tough as Yaakov. They don't have to flee a murderous brother. Their father didn't try to kill him. The grandfather didn't try to kill the father. So they got some family drama. They got some generational trauma, epigenetic trauma going on, right? And then, and then he has to flee, and then he gets tricked into marrying the older sister, and then has to work another 7 years for the younger sister. They hate each other. He's married to two sisters who can't stand that they have to share him. They're in competition all the time for having babies. And his favorite wife, the one he worked so hard to get, what happens to her? She dies giving birth to Benjamin. He doesn't care about another son. He has a ton of sons. She's the one who wants another son because she's in competition with Leah. And he's like, what, am I not enough for you? He says it in Torah. Am I not enough for you? Yeah. And she dies. Yaakov's had a hard time.
I'm sure of most.
And he's got a lot. He's got a lot because he's clever, right? He's a trickster. He's clever. So he succeeds, but it's not been an easy path for him. And now he's coming to face his brother who has 400 men.
But this person, whatever he's struggling with.
Well, we don't know that it's empathy because we can't read feeling or emotion into it. What we know is that the being knows Yaakov's past. Yeah, like he's speaking a truth about Yaakov and changing Yaakov's name. Right? So the saring, whatever the saring is, that's the sra part of Yisrael. What's the El part? God. Yisrael, you sarred with El. Vatuchal, and you were able. Okay? So somehow, and let's go on so we can see how Yaakov understands this.
I know then it goes on to say he limped away, but are there later on references to him being injured by this or limping?
Yeah.
That's the last we hear.
Vayishal Yaakov. I have a new theory. I have a new theory. I do. I have a new theory.
Dr. Good was busy.
I'll get there. Right? So Vayishal Yaakov, and Yaakov asks Vayomer, saying, Hagida na shmecha, tell me your name. Vayomer, and he said, Lama zatish al lishmi, what is this business of you asking for my name? Vayivarech oto sham, and he blessed him there. Vayikra Yaakov shema makom pniel. He names the place where this happened. Yaakov names the place Pniel. Something about the face of God. Didn't we just talk about face? Yeah. I'm going to see my brother's face, and hopefully he will lift my face. Now I have something about the face of God. Now it's going to explain it a little better. Ki ra'iti, because I saw Elohim. Either capital or lowercase. Panim el panim, face to face. V'tinatzel nafshi, but my soul was saved. Meaning I didn't die. I came face to face with Elohim, and didn't die. So Yaakov understands this very clearly to have been an encounter with some kind of aspect of divinity. It doesn't get clearer than this. Pniel, because I saw God, panim el panim. It doesn't get clearer than this. So either it's God's or God, but it's definitely a divine encounter. Vayizrach lo hashemesh, and the sun came up, right? Ka'asher avar et Pnuel v'hu tzolea al Yericho. And as he was going by Pnuel, he was limping on his yerech, on his thigh. Mm-hmm. We know it well. And al-kain, because of that, the people of Israel to this day do not eat the kaf yerech of the animal, the hip socket of the animal, because Yaakov was hurt there in his yerech.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Is which part of that true? This is not kosher. This is not kosher.
The
rump roast is not kosher. So,
not chicken.
Yes. So this means meat. Right.
And what we don't know is what they are talking about. Because all of a sudden, it's like the narrator jumps way into the future.
Exactly.
I'm in the story, and then all of a sudden, well, that's why up until today, as if it was written in 1957, we don't eat that. Was that?
But in a way, this is the typical how the elephant got its trunk tail. It's an what is it called? An etymological tail? Etymological. That it explains why we don't eat that today.
Right.
Because this happened a long time ago. When they're sitting around the fire telling these stories, they're telling it about a long time ago. And to this day, we don't eat that. My teacher, Tikva Frey-Merkensky of blessed memory, she taught us, most likely, they thought the sciatic nerve was part of the reproductive system. And that it was taboo for Israelites to eat any part of the reproductive system, most likely because other cultures around them did. As a fertility ritual. Think about tiger testes or whatever that have this magical association with them. And so Israelites were forbidden to go anywhere near the things that those pagans were eating because they were in danger of backsliding into Baal worship and into Ishtar and Astarte and Asherah, right? Because we know they never gave it up. We don't need prophets yelling and screaming about it if they gave it up. Why are the prophets always yelling? Because they were still worshiping Asherah. Okay. Question? Oh, okay. There's no silly question. Why was it what? So if I may change your question just a little, what we tend to do is not ask why. This is a story we have. But along the lines of that, what does it mean? What is the meaning that Israelites associated with telling this story? And that's the rest of Jewish literature. That's the rest of Jewish commentary. That's the Talmud. That's the Midrash. That's Midrash Rabbah. That's Rashi. That's Maimonides. That the rest of Jewish history is asking exactly that question. It's not a silly question. It's the only question to ask once you understand the pshat, once you understand the Hebrew and you understand what's happening. Why do we tell it? Why did the Israelites tell it? What is going on with this story? That's the point of Torah study each week, is to try to answer that question.
What if Rabbi or whatever it is asking, why do you ask my name?
Aha, you tell me.
I mean,
that's a weird response in some ways. What if it's not a weird response? What is the being saying?
You don't need to know. You don't know it's not God, or you should already know. So figures out. Don't ask me. Don't have the nerve to ask it.
Clearly, it's either you. That is chutzpahdik that you're going to ask my name. Why? What? Who cares if you tell them your name is Lisa Rosenbaum? What is naming? What is naming in the ancient Near East? It's power. Tell me your name so I can make the blessing have power. If I don't know your name, I can't invoke the essence of you to do anything. I need to know your name, right? Because what does Moshe say to God? Who am I going to say sent me? Who are you? I can't worship you. I can't be in relationship to a God if I don't know your name. So the being is saying, shh, doesn't work that way. I'm not going to tell you anything about my name. Yet. No, don't try to turn this around. Doesn't work that way. I'm the one giving the blessing here, right? You don't get to ask my name.
He's Rumpelstiltskin.
I'm not giving you any power. I'm going to give you a blessing, but that's it. It's not an equal relationship. Or the being isn't open to that, right? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. You just be about your own little name change business.
Well,
Don't you be worrying about my name, huh?
Being wouldn't have a messenger of God.
So if it's a messenger, maybe it doesn't have a name. But there seems to be a little more going on with the answer being mazeh. What's with this?
Yeah.
Literally, mazeh. What's this? What's with this? You asking me my name? Like, it's more than I don't have one. It seems to be suggesting Yaakov is out of line, right? What's with this? You asking me my name? I don't think so, right? Okay. So then here we go. This is why to this day we don't eat this. And he limps off on his bad hip. I now truly believe, I'm not making this up. I really believe this is a story about how the elephant got its trunk. It's also a story about somebody with hip dysplasia or arthritis. I believe that this is a story that comes from somebody who can't walk on their hip.
And people looked at that kind of ailment as a curse. You've been cursed.
If you're going to have a hip situation that you can barely walk, and those of us who have been there, you do limp.
Yes.
You limp. If you have arthritis that's so bad in your hip that it's bone on bone, you limp. So if that's a condition you have, and if your patriarch, the head of the family was known to have it, wouldn't you prefer this be the way that got to be so? All of a sudden, it made sense to me. Took two hips, but it made sense to me that it's a way to make that condition that somebody in the family had, be something that's not a curse. It's the opposite of a curse. He gets it as part of a blessing. But I think it's also important. So let's say it is about how the elephant got his trunk, how our patriarch got to be limping. Okay, let's say it is one of those stories. It is interesting that he's injured and limps away from this encounter. So let's look at what might the meaning be of writing the story, telling the story that way. All right. So we're going to look at this verse. Which verse? Vayivater Yaakov levado. He remains alone, and Ish wrestles with him until the sun starts to come up. The dawn starts to rise, right? The Shachar. I've never heard this interpretation before. I don't know how I've never heard this before. Rashbam, Rashi's grandson, and he's left alone. After he had transferred all his belongings to the other side of the river so that the only one still to be brought across was he himself. The reason that he wanted to cross only after everyone else had already crossed was that he intended to flee in a different direction so as to avoid a face-to-face encounter with Esav. I don't know, I've never heard that.
I'll just take the train.
Y'all go. He's not coming for y'all. He's not after y'all.
Exactly.
I'm out of here. That's why he sent them over, got everything, the tents all put together and the backpacks all put away and the freeze-dried food came out, and he goes back to the other side because he's going to take off.
He's a diversion.
Exactly. And also like making sure they're safe. And then he's going to hightail it out of there. I've never heard this interpreted. And it's a pretty famous, Rashbam is pretty famous. It's not like, this is Rashi's grandson. How have I never heard this?
It's logical.
But guess what? Rabbi Tali Adler seems to have known about this interpretation. because she says it is no great surprise. Running away has been Yaakov's preferred mode. First in his flight from home at his mother's urging, and then again recently to escape from Lavan. Remember, he leaves Lavan's house in the middle of the night. Now, about to encounter Esau for the first time since that first flight, Yaakov again decides to run. Maybe he's playing for time before he meets his brother, hoping to come up with a plan that will save them all. Maybe in times of terror, this is simply the only thing he knows how to do. This time, though, Yaakov meets a nameless man, and the story changes. The encounter with the man who wrestles him until sunrise finally forces Yaakov into a direct confrontation, something he has always avoided to this point. Huh? You're getting ahead of me. You're so brilliant, Susan. You're getting ahead of me. And this blessing of a new name, the man changes Yaakov's conception of himself. Look, he might be saying, what you've done tonight. You have faced me. We wrestled together all night and you survived. You are capable of facing a stranger face on. Surely you are capable of facing your brother as well. Running away is not your only option. You have learned tonight that there are pathways forward. Okay, now we start to get to the why tell the story, right? There seems to be something here about running from confrontation is not how you become Yisrael. Remember, this is not just a story about Yaakov. Who is this a story about? Us, Israel. This is our name. This is how we get the name Yisrael. We are not called Bnei Yaakov, are we? We are not called the descendants of Yaakov as a people. We are called Bnei Yisrael. This is our name story. So this also says something not about just Yaakov, but about us. What are we told?
God rests.
We are not a people that runs. Well, unless we have to. But we are a people, when it comes to when it comes to God, what do? We stay. And we struggle. And we wrestle. And we survive. The people who wrestle with the divine and survive. Right.
We need that strength.
Which explains why we're still.
Because we're always
Just saying. All right. So, Rabbi, heavy sigh from Bert. Okay. Rabbi Dr. Mira Neshama Niculescu says that night as Jacob sleeps. So now she's interpreting this as something that happens while he's sleeping again. So possibly this is a dream. A mysterious figure comes to wrestle with him. And while he had run from Esau years before, this time Yaakov stays to confront his challenger. So she's reading it the opposite than the commentator we just read, right? She's saying that this time Yaakov doesn't run, right? And more, he keeps this dark shadow very close. He doesn't flee or even release him. Like he could have let him go. Only at the break of dawn, when the mysterious contender asks to be let go, does Jacob relent, saying, I will not send you away unless you bless me. To my mind, our commentator says, she says, this may be one of the most beautiful sentences in the whole of Torah. Really? Okay. Unpack that for us. I won't let you go until you bless me. What a powerful teaching. So often we do the opposite. The difficulties that come to us, we instinctively try to push away. It's necessary to become very close and intimate with what challenges us until the wrestling becomes an embrace, until the challenge becomes a blessing. This is what Yaakov teaches us through his night of wrestling, right? A very powerful teaching. Indeed, we want to push stuff away. And we know anybody who's wise knows, nope, that's not how it works. If you want to grow, you have to not only face it, you have to get very close to it and intimate with it until a challenge becomes a blessing.
But you can't let it overpower you either. Mm-hmm. There's a whole cycle, I believe, of when you're facing difficulties or facing challenges, that you can't get so wrapped up in that challenge that obsesses your life. You've got to be able to some balance to be able to deal with that challenge and function.
Mm-hmm.
May I give you one of the most, my husband David was, and he knew he had a very short to do this. When he died, my first thought was, and then I thought, I was with you the end of his life to be there.
And what would have happened if you just said, I can't deal with this, I'm hightailing it out of here?
Yeah, here.
You wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be who you are, you wouldn't have that memory, you wouldn't have that blessing, and you wouldn't be sitting next to Mark.
Sometimes you don't see at the time
The way it's going to show up.
right, but you have to determine that you're going to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Or that you're going to stay
Yeah,
through
keep
it,
living.
right? And not let the definition we have of it being horrible keep us from doing what's going to actually turn out to be a blessing. And blessings sometimes are not fun. Right? This is not saying, oh, and it's all going to be okay. There's a silver lining. That is not what this is saying, because you know that's not me. I don't like that. This is saying some of the hardest stuff we do, if we face it and we're there and we get intimate and up close to it, we take a blessing as we limp away. All right, let's go. I want to get to that. Rabbi Rachel Goldenberg, to be deeply defeated is the name of her her piece on this. As Jacob sits alone, he fully experiences the inner contention that the prospect of seeing his brother has triggered in him. So just take whatever triggers you, right? Like trigger, I mean, that word should trigger. So just whatever triggers us, instead of distracting himself with strategies and plans, which he usually does, Jacob welcomes in the unpleasant feelings and wrestles with them. Through this wrestling, Jacob comes face to face with divinity, with truth. Perhaps that means he sits with the pain that he and Esau have caused each other. Perhaps he feels remorse for his past behavior. Maybe he even feels love for his brother. In the end, Jacob prevails. His opponent declares Vatuchal, which is usually translated as you prevailed. However, a more literal reading would render this word as you were able. Jacob here is able to be present with the truth that he is not in control, that he is vulnerable, that he can't predict how Esau will receive him. That this is what she's saying. It means that he saw the face of God. He saw truth and could look it in the face.
Rabbi, why did I don't understand why his hip was dislocated. I don't know why that had to be.
Okay, let's look.
How is that in the
Let's go on to another piece from Rabbi Tali Adler. While Yaakov's injury, don't think I don't anticipate my people. While Yaakov's injury may have prevented him from fleeing only temporarily, something about his encounter with the angel and the injury he carried from it remains with Yaakov's children and is ritualized through their refusal to eat the Gid HaNasheh. His sons, the young children who Yaakov helped across the river that night in his aborted attempt to flee, carry the memory of that night and pass it on to their children in turn. In refraining from eating the Gid HaNasheh, they maintain an embodied memory of the refusal to flee and a ritual reminder of the man's blessing that we are capable of confrontation. Confrontation with those we've wronged, who have wronged us, can be terrifying. So often it is easier to walk away or tell pleasant lies and paper over wounds. The man's blessing to Yaakov, though, urges us to choose another way, to face open confrontation with all its dangers, because the rewards that it offers are worth it. Because it is only through risking real confrontation with our brothers that we are transformed from Jacob's family into Bnei Israel. Because confrontation hurts. And we carry the pain of it with us.
Okay.
It's not saying there, like I said, there's a silver lining or everything happens for a reason. Blah, blah, blah. This is not cotton candy spirituality. This is life. And it sucks sometimes. And confrontation is necessary, but when we have to confront what we've done, who we've been, or someone who's done it to us, or the ways that we're vulnerable and are not in control, it hurts. And it continues to hurt.
We limp.
And we limp. Our stories are not about, ooh, and we were the biggest, most powerful, and we carried our ships on our backs and we beat everybody up. Those are not our stories. Our stories are, we limp and we survive. We limp, but we are Yisrael. If you're not limping, it's because you didn't face it. And if you don't face it, you don't limp, but you're not Yisrael. You stay Yaakov. Then that's not our story. Is it? That's not our story. Our story is we stay and we persevere and we limp. We are not the most powerful people. We are less than 0.5%. The Jewish people. 0.5%. Less than that. And we serve.
Is there a connection between Yaakov's name and Akev?
Of course.
And the walking issue?
So we also had Avik, right? But that's with an Aleph. His name is with an Ayin, but of course, if it's an oral story,
right,
you can't miss it. And of course, it's said that he was hanging on to Esav's heel when he was born.
And a heel is what you walk on.
Mm-hmm. So we have.
I don't know what the connection is, but you've got the heel,
you're going to tell us next week.
Limp, and you've got.
You're going to write the midrash, and you're going to tell us next week what it means, what the connection is. All right. He wrestles, and we, his descendants, keep wrestling with God or God's absence, with our fear and bewilderment among ourselves and with others in small ways and explosive ways, with these texts that we are raised to wrestle with year after year, that may be telling us to do one thing, be one way, or maybe telling us to do something else entirely, the exact opposite even, to learn from mistakes and do better. We wrestle, twisting ourselves into knots to fit any of what we read and see happening around us into a schema for righteousness and meaning. We are a nation who has been blessed, rebranded, prophesied, cursed to wrestle, whether we want to or not.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.